Shelby Boston is the director of the Department of Employment and Social Services for Butte County. Her department employs 670 staff and provides all social services and assistance programs for the county. Shelby has been there since 1998, where she began as in child protective social worker. She holds a master's in social work from CSU Chico and over 22 years of experience in serving the most vulnerable members of Butte County. And she established after the Camp Fire, 12 shelters, both within the county and outside of the county. And she was responsible for managing the Disaster Recovery Center, as well as the Family Assistance Center. Lieutenant Stephen Collins is the emergency manager for the Butte County Sheriff's Office. He began his career in law enforcement with the Butte County Sheriff's Office in 1996 and has been a patrol deputy, field training officer, and supervised patrol teams, and as well as felony investigations in Butte County. At the time of the Camp Fire, he assisted at the command post with coordinating evacuations, and the following day was tasked with overseeing the search and recovery of Camp Fire victims. And Christopher Allen Smith is an Emmy Award-winning documentarian. He lives in Paradise, California with his family. He lived until the Camp Fire consumed his home in 2018. Since then, he has been conducting interviews and research into the history of the fire, as well as the lessons taken by first responders, civilians, government officials, and private disaster planners. With an eye towards producing multiple projects based on those lessons, he also acted as a field producer for Ron Howard's Rebuilding Paradise. I am eager to hear from you, lessons we can learn, and welcome to our conference. I hand it over to you.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. Any chance to get the message out.
Good morning, everyone. Chris, you want to go ahead and get our slides up? And we will jump right in. It's really our honor to be here today. We were disappointed, like everyone else last year, when we weren't able to provide this information. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Chris.
Okay, the Camp Fire has been the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California's history. We did lose 85 people during that fire. It was a very fast-moving fire. Within an hour and 15 minutes, it had traveled 8 miles and started into the town of Paradise. There's the stats on the destruction that it caused, but really the big thing is that it was so fast that we had little time to do evacuations. And so that's kind of what we're going to focus on, is that reality in a fast-moving wildfire.
Thank you. Chris, you want to go ahead and introduce?
Hi, my name is Chris Smith. I am as everyone said, the director of a documentary on the lessons learned for the Camp Fire called A High and Awful Price. After I lost my home and most of my friends and family in Paradise lost their homes, we wanted to take something from what we had all been through and do some good with it. So I coordinated with them, and Shelby was instrumental, and one of the producers on A High and Awful Price, to assemble the video that you're about to see, or the video that you're about to see a preview of. And that is A High and Awful Price. And I've produced another segment associated with it, but we can talk about that later. Here is the preview.
Every single disaster has its own reality. You know, no disaster is the same.
These lessons saved my life. I'm from the Paradise Ridge in Butte County.
You know, we knew as fire service professionals that Paradise was susceptible to fire.
Over the last 10 years, my neighbors, family, friends, and fellow citizens have lived through more than we can say. And we've got a message for you.
I would say that the '08 fires definitely laid the foundation for the way that the county has responded to future disasters.
If the spillway was undermined and gave way, we were looking at the potential of a 30-foot high wall of water, 1,300 feet long, cascading down the side of the mountain, taking with it everything in its path, and then it would continue to flow that way until the top 30 feet of the lake had drained off.
Very little firefighting went on early on in the fire because all the resources were dedicated just to securing people and getting them out of their neighborhoods, their homes, their community.
We're going to have an incident that you will not get a fire truck at your house to help you. You're going to have to help yourself, and you need to be prepared for it.
These videos will tell what happened to us and are meant to pass on the lessons we learned. Because sooner or later, what we know may be the thing that gets you and yours through the worst day of your life.
Experiences with the Oroville Dam spillway evacuation informed and guided our response to the campfire evacuation.
I can't stress disaster preparation enough. I mean, if you do it over and over and over again, it gets to be a routine. Granted, once the spot fires happen and the urgency of the situation, your heartbeat was racing a little more than just a drill. But it did give us an idea of what we needed to do.
Semper Gumby, we like to say. You have to be flexible. You have to have plan A, B, and C, and know in the back of your mind, this is the plan, but sometimes that plan doesn't work out, and we've got backups and backups.
And we changed the town of Paradise and Upper Ridge evacuation plan to follow the national Ready, Set, Go format.
If you spoke to me on November 7th, I would have said, you know what, we have a good plan in place. Unfortunately, that all went out the window on November 8th. You know, the campfire was unfortunately the perfect storm.
We are talking thousands of houses, thousands of businesses. It is truly like a bomb went off. All that's left are chimneys. It was like a ghost town.
What will come out of this, at least my hope, is that people will be inspired to take personal responsibility for their own safety, that they won't rely upon someone else to develop an evacuation or safety plan for them.
These are not meant to scare you. They are meant to give you what you need to make it through whatever you face. And the first lesson is this: find out as much as you can, starting here.
Okay.
I want to talk about the pre-planning. That is so crucial to being able to survive a disaster. And like was mentioned in the video, you've got to have your plan A, and then you've got to have a plan B, and then you've got to have a plan C. And when all else fails, what happens if you can't evacuate? Where can you go to survive until the danger is past, or we can get help to you? But like the sheriff said, do not plan on someone else being able to come to your aid. What we just had happen in a number of our disasters is once it happens, we shut down the roadway into that area. And so if you have family or someone that's going to come and help you evacuate that lives out of the area, more than likely they will not be able to get in to help you. So have a plan that involves people that live close to you, that you trust, and have it be more than one person so that you have a backup in case your first person is not available.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, one thing I just wanted to jump in real quick is it was some of the points on this slide particularly were instrumental in what happened to me, is because we had a fire in 2008 on the ridge. it got everybody kind of very aware and started planning for what they're going to do. And my family, along with the town of Paradise, we made our plans. So on November 8th, you know, in all the previous evacuations, you would have hours, sometimes a day or two before a mandatory evacuation was declared for wherever you lived. But here, one of the things that was shocking for me and everybody is I had maybe a half an hour. So I didn't really have time to think through a lot of stuff. All I had to do was the plan that I knew. And, you know, I grabbed my son, we just started ticking everything off of what we needed to do. And we were out and we were safe. And because of that, we were able to leave fast enough that we were not among the people that had to drive through fire. So it was one of those things, almost like I say, kind of like a Karate Kid moment where you practice all these things for years. And then when the time comes, you don't even really have to think about it. You just act on it and do it. And before I knew it, I was out, I was safe. We had the essentials of what we needed, or almost all of them. And yeah, so this, for me, pre-planning is the thing that made all the difference for myself and for my son, who were the two people in the house that morning. So yeah, this is everything.
I want to add to that pre-plan, like Chris said, you kind of go into autopilot mode and you start following your plan. The problem if you don't plan is that when the emergency happens, you will start coming up with a plan and you will grab things that are irrelevant and unnecessary, and you're going to more than likely delay your evacuation. And that's what a lot of people came across, is that they were grabbing things that they didn't need and delayed their leaving until it was almost too late, and we're stuck in traffic because the roads got burned over by fire and blocked by vehicles that broke down and power poles that came down and trees that came down. So have that plan. That way you're not making poor decisions in the emergency.
Chris, do you want to pop up the video, the next video clip? We're going to do our best to show as many of the clips as we can within our time limit. One of the things we did in preparing and creating this video series is partnering with a local executive director of Cove at the time, and you'll see Bob Irvine come up.
Which, you know, as you know, in our county, we have a lot of rural, remote areas. You know, the Ridge area had a very high percentage of access and functional need. 25% of the population just in Paradise alone was over the age of 65.
People like Bob's clients with challenges to health and understanding are often the first to suffer in a disaster. That's why Bob's team at California Vocations has prepared for the worst, along with the disaster planners of Paradise and Butte County. It was these plans that saw Bob, his employees, and clients, over 250 in all, through one of the most destructive fires in American history.
Well, we're required as a licensed facility to do disaster drills every 6 months and fire drills every month. So we were doing the drills where we would load up the car. We didn't necessarily go to an off-site location, but we did the drill in the middle of the night even, where we would evacuate the home into the vehicles. So at least our clients could get a routine down, so they weren't so alarmed and panic if it were ever to happen.
We talk about the worst case scenario, but what we should call it is the worst case imaginable. True worst cases are often much worse than anything in our preparations. An unsinkable ship hits an iceberg in a way no ship has hit any iceberg before. Teams of terrorists hijack 4 planes, all at the same time. A decades-old flaw in concrete shreds open a spillway and threatens 100,000 people. What binds these disasters is that they were all possible, but challenging even for the best planners to anticipate. For my community, the worst case possible came at 6:25 in the morning in a place 10.2 miles from my front door.
At the time I saw the smoke plume, I said, here we go again. Reminded me of the previous time we were evacuated. So I basically, this time, I thought I was smart, and I packed my own bag and then went to the office.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank
Can
you.
pop back up the slides and we'll start talking about communication. We recognize communication was instrumental in getting so many people out and off of the ridge during the campfire. But Steve, do you want to
Yeah,
jump in?
thank you. Every agency or county should have a notification system in place. For Butte County, we utilize the Code Red notification system. And we ask our community members to sign up for notifications. We also use FEMA's iPause system, which uses the TV and radio as well as cell phone notification to send out emergency alerts. So first of all, I would recommend that everybody find out what type of notification system their emergency managers use to notify the public and get signed up. The hardest thing during emergency is getting information, but the critical information that you need will be coming through that means. So sign up for that. However, with that caveat, what we experienced during the campfire is that due to the destructive nature of the fire, it wiped out a lot of our telecommunication systems in the area. Therefore, within just a couple of hours, we'd lost the ability to notify the public via cell phones and the telephone system. So make sure that you've got another way of receiving notifications, like battery powered radios, or just going out and getting in your car, turning on the radio to get emergency information through that means. So everybody struggles with communication during an emergency and a disaster. So set yourself up to be the best informed that you can be, and then be prepared to make decisions based off of the limited information you're going to have.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. While I work as a filmmaker now, I was trained as a journalist. My early career was in journalism. So it's kind of second nature to me almost to kind of try to ferret out information, sift it from misinformation, which can be rumors, which can be gossip, which can be misunderstandings, which can be whatever. And one of the things that I was taken aback by in the hours of the fire and days after is even people with the best intentions who were on the spot, who were doing their best to convey good information, were conveying misinformation, misunderstood information. One of the things that I found so interesting, and this is actually in a new addition to the High and Awful Price documentary, is there were a lot of structures in Paradise that stand today that people reported seeing burned down or seeing on fire with their own eyes. And it's not because they were being difficult or trying to spread rumors, but they were under a lot of stress. There were things on fire around these things. They made reasonable assumptions given what they had already seen, that a bunch of, that these places were going to burn down, like Town Hall, Kmart, the high school, and all of those, none of those things burned down. So just be exceedingly careful with what you're hearing and where you're getting the information from. And don't be afraid to take certain things with a grain of salt, but at the same time, and this is where it's a very difficult balancing act, you have got to act sooner than you probably would like, given what information you need. If you have a life-threatening situation, you're going to want to have the best information you can get before you make your choice in that situation. But the awful fact is you cannot wait for that information. So you have to come to peace with the fact that you're going to have to make these very difficult, trying decisions without the best information that is theoretically gettable. There were a lot of smart, trained people on the ridge that day trying to find out what was going on, but it was months, weeks or months later that people really understood the chain of events, the chain of causality. So even the smartest, most informed people on the day, on the location, they might not even know what the real situational awareness is or situational conditions are until days or weeks later. So you just have to be ready to move without ideal information.
You want to pop to the next slide, Chris, please? So one of the additional tools we use in Butte County is the SNAP tool, which is the Special Needs Awareness Program. We've had this program in place for approximately 17 years. We've morphed it after every emergency incident to really become a significant planning tool in our county. And basically what it is in addition to code red notifications and other tools that Lieutenant Collins discussed, we use the SNAP tool for IHSS recipients as well as the general public who choose to ask and register to be on the SNAP tool. And so what will happen is individuals will receive a code red notification or an IPAWS notification, but then if they're determined to be in an impacted area, we then notify them in addition. Sometimes if the scale of the incident is small enough, they will actually get one of the social workers in our agency will actually make voice-to-voice contact with that client or the individual in the community who has registered for the tool. And in addition to that, I indicated we use it as a planning tool. So during emergency operations, Lieutenant Collins will call me in the Emergency Operations Center and he'll say, Shelby, we're looking at potentially evacuating this next 2 or 3 blocks or square miles. And then I'm actually able to pull up on a GIS mapping tool exactly who's in that area. And then we, when time allows, we're able to send out deputies to the doors to knock and talk and make sure people have a plan. We have the information as to what is that individual's specific need. Are they bedbound? Are they in a wheelchair? Will they have someone already in their plan to come and evacuate them? We collect all of that detailed information, and then I'm able to indicate that during an emergency as we're doing our best to ensure that individuals who have AFN are absolutely a priority to get them out and into safety as quickly as possible. The next slide, please.
Okay. There comes a point when your planning only goes so far. In our planning for evacuating people out of Paradise and Magalia area, we ran into the problem that every evacuation route that we were utilizing was blocked at one point or another, and a number of them were blocked multiple times due to the fire and vehicles and whatnot. So we ended up having to improvise. We took people and put them into asphalt parking lots where they could shelter in place until the fire had burned past. So our evacuation plan changed to a shelter in place plan until we could get more help in there. So likewise, you need to be prepared to completely adjust your plan based off of the circumstances that you find yourself in. Depending on your area and what threats that you have from Mother Nature and man-made, have a plan, but have multiple ideas of alternate plans for you to do to survive.
Just adding to that, I would say ensuring that your staff have a plan as well, making sure that they are always in the back of their mind and in your organization's mind, thinking about what would happen, how would we continue to serve our clients and ensure our staff can take care of what they need to in their personal life as well. Next slide, Chris. This one, this lesson learned is really important around thinking regionally, not just locally. You know, we all have our mandates to have plans for our organization. If you're a licensed facility provider, you have a requirement to have a plan for your facility. What we found in working with our providers in our community, especially up on the ridge, is they did a great job in making sure they had an immediate evacuation plan for example, if their facility caught on fire. It was a single incident, maybe there was a kitchen fire. But what we found with very quickly is the fact that organizations weren't always thinking regionally. So do they have a sister agency that they could call on in times of need? Do they have a plan that contradicts what the government officials are doing in their planning? And we have another brief clip that we'd like to show you that demonstrates this from Bob's perspective. When the two plans collide, and the challenges that it can really throw into your emergency situation.
Okay.
Among those looking for someplace to stay was Bob Irvine from California Vocations, his 50 clients and 200 employees. Like everybody else, Bob was using the elements of his pre-disaster plan to improvise a way to safety.
The plan was two things. One, to start securing hotel rooms in the area, and then two, we'll do a rendezvous at the fairgrounds down in Chico, so we'll all get together. Unfortunately, we didn't realize the emergency response units kind of used the fairgrounds for their site, so they weren't letting anybody there. Our rendezvous site was not available, and so we were all communicating via cell phone. Where are you? Where are you? And a large group of us went out to Woodson Bridge, to the campground there. One of our managers, Arlene Cruz, was very familiar with that property and the owners, and they took us in. So whoever couldn't find a hotel ended up going to Woodson Bridge. And there was, I would say, out of the 50 clients, there was probably 20 clients there. And the others were able to secure hotel rooms, but we were spread out all throughout Northern California. We were in Yuba City, we were in Corning, we were in Anderson. It was a realization that this situation was not sustainable, and it was bigger than us. So at that point in time, I sent an email to every elected official that I knew, county, state, United States, and said, pleading for help. We had the 50 clients, we had 250 employees, and who knows what our properties burnt.
This was Bob's version of a common survivor experience. You don't just lose things, you lose where you live, your security.
So I think that demonstrates where the importance of really doing that planning together as much as possible, and making sure that your organization's plan is not going to impact or be in conflict with the other plans for their organizations around you. One of the other big things that we ran into was making sure that we had a backup plan for human resources, people working the incident, as well as the goods that we would need. It was difficult to get supplies and things for survivors because everything, when people evacuated so quickly, they were so heavily depleted in the community. So trying to find a wheelchair, trying to find bariatric seats or wheelchairs was very challenging as well. So having the backup plans, having caches in multiple locations and with sister agencies that you might be able to get resources from is really important. We'll go ahead to the next slide. And again, we talked a little bit about this already. One of the things that really struck all of us was when the evacuations occurred, making sure as you're handling your duties in your job and your function, also making sure that you have a plan for yourself and your family. And in our situations, many of us didn't go home, didn't have anywhere to get a break. Both Chris and I, we lived in Paradise. We didn't go home. We didn't see our families. I didn't see my family for over 30 days. Where will you go if you're working? You have responsibilities for your job and your organization. Where will you stay? Where will your family be? And where will your staff's family be? Those are all things that we do so much planning for the immediacy of what are we going to do in the moment to evacuate. But when you start to really look and think about the long-term implications of a major disaster and how that will impact you, it's very significant and something to really take into consideration. Next slide, please. And then, of course, the long-term recovery. And, again, every disaster is different. And some disasters you are over and finished with the recovery within a few months. When it comes to the major disasters like the Camp Fire, we're still in the throes of recovery and will be for a very long time. But these are all things to think about. How will you continue to serve your population, your organization's mission and vision if you're displaced or unable to continue in your normalcy? And to recognize that everything takes longer in recovery than you think. Something that would normally be quick and easy takes much longer when an entire infrastructure has been impacted.
Definitely. Yeah.
Shelby, I would just add to that plan on there's going to be emotional impacts to your clients, to your employees. And that whole aspect is going to be another part that you're going to want to look to see where you can help with that.
Absolutely. Next slide, Chris. And then we're going to jump to Q&A after this next slide. I know that some folks have typed in some great questions in the Q&A, and if you have some additional questions, please feel free to add those in. This last slide, and Chris alluded to this, he's added a new piece to the training videos that you can find on YouTube. But I really think stressing this one in particular is important if you're in a leadership position. When you're in the throes of a disaster, when you're asked by every media outlet to start communicating what is happening from the county or the organization's perspective, the advice we strongly give is to acknowledge the situation honestly with as much information that you know at the time. Prepare for the craziness that's about to come, and to be as honest, transparent, and authentic as you possibly can be. We're very fortunate in our county that we have a great sheriff who takes the bull by the horns during press conferences and is very skilled at providing high level of information in as concise a way as he can, with the caveat that things are always changing, and we're going to provide as much of information as we know at the time. Do you want to, either gentleman want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would definitely say, as somebody who lived through this, not from the leadership point of view, but from the kind of citizen point of view, it's okay if you don't know. if you're in a leadership position, and it's okay to verbalize that and talk about that. I think a lot of leaders seem to have an instinctual reaction that they've got to, project certain things that they might not know. And I can't stress enough that those who BS'd us during this time and in other disasters are never forgiven. Because not having good it's understandable not to have information in a situation that's as chaotic as this, and people who are living through it feel that own chaos. So they do have a lot of empathy for leaders that are having to juggle these bowling balls in this hurricane. And saying that you don't know is, or giving partial information and making it clear, this is all the information I have at the moment and I will update you as soon as possible, is great. One of the things that's interesting is since the fire, I've looked at a lot of leadership through different disasters and wars and all that kind of thing. And, a lot of people talk about FDR and Winston Churchill in their communication during World War II, but they kind of forget that most of the communication in World War II, especially during the first half, was preparing the public for things sucking, things being awful, things not working. They would say things like, for the next a year and a half, 2 years, it's going to be hard. You're going to wonder if this is working out. Might not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if we all do X, Y, Z, trust me, we'll get there. So their communication was not cheerleading, was not rah, everything's fine. It was very frank, very clear. But what it conveyed is a sense of the entire slog through the situation that they were in. And that kind of honesty in a time of immense emotional charge and chaos is unbelievably appreciated. So I would just, this is one of the reasons that I put this in the new part 5 and here is, this is something that I don't see a lot of leaders doing in various situations, but every time they do it, like Sheriff Honey during both the spillway and the campfire and all that, it's unbelievably valuable and comforting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let's jump. We have about 4 minutes left in our session. I know we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. I appreciate people typing those in. There is a question about that stating that I think it's more of a statement, and we don't disagree with it. The deaf could hear the siren. Could a flash of light have worked? Lieutenant Collins, do you want to speak quickly to that?
Yes. We use the siren and we use our lights. But even at that, that's no guarantee that somebody's going to A, hear the siren, or B, see our flashing lights. And ideally what we train to do is to go to each door, knock on the door, look through the windows, look over the fence, to potentially find somebody that isn't aware of what is going on. In the campfire, we did not have that luxury. We were just trying to get as many people aware of the threat as possible. And there was very little time for door to door.
Yeah. The next question we have is, apart from California Vocations, were there other disability-oriented evacuation programs in place since sheltering in place was not an option? And I will just say that every organization that we've spoken to since the fire definitely had plans. The problem, which Lieutenant Collins just kind of alluded to again, is when you have an incident such as the campfire that moved so quickly, and traffic was shut down, normal routes of traffic were shut down for evacuation purposes, best laid plans got thrown out. And we know that we had organizations who had plans for paratransit to come up or buses to come up and help them evacuate. And unfortunately, those plans didn't get to be played out. What we finally resulted in was literally, like Lieutenant Collins said, trying to get everyone out as quickly as possible. We had private citizens who were taking people literally off of the sidewalk or the street and putting them in their vehicle and evacuating.
Yeah.
So it kind of speaks to that needing to throw your best laid plans out the window when you realize very quickly that your plan is not going to work with a situation. I will say in a slower moving incident, those plans do come into play and are very important.
Yeah. One thing I want to add is that when a situation like this comes along that overwhelms your plan, that's not a failure of the people that made the plan. That's not a failure of the people who thought everything up. That is actually the nature of these situations. You use the plan in order to know what you need to do, but don't feel like you've failed or things have gone catastrophically wrong or whatever if there's something that comes up that you didn't anticipate that's not in the plan. That's not a failure. That's actually the condition that you will, in something like this, you will likely find yourself in. So kind of self-recriminations or finger pointing or whatever is, A, useless, and B, when something like this happens, it's so immense, no plan will ever be able to anticipate all the factors in it. So you are always going to be improvising. And that's the way it, that's just the way it is.
I know we are up on our time. We have a couple of more questions. I'm going to jump to Sarah's question. Is SNAP or something similar a requirement for all counties or regions? And the answer is no, it is not. It is something that we've done here in Butte County, but it is not a requirement. And were there issues with caregivers needing to go home and take care of their families? Absolutely. That was a challenge both in our sheltering operations as well as people who were staying with friends and family that we had to address. I think that really we're out of time. So I don't know, Steve, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I was reading the question about resources available for training for those people with developmental disabilities in their community. There are, I know, apps that you can get. Most Office of Emergency Management or Cal OES and even FEMA offer material that you can use to help make a plan and to prepare for multiple types of disasters. We focused on the campfire, but just like where Texas just had that freeze, I know for our area, we also are threatened by floods. We've had tornadoes. So you need to be prepared for multiple types of circumstances and just do the best you can with what you have planned. And the main thing is just to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. You can
Director
always
Boston.
pick up the pieces.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I was gonna say,
Go ahead.
Director Boston and Chris, Mr. Smith, and Lieutenant Collins, this has been just a really incredible presentation on preparation and making sure people are thinking, and it was very applicable to our community, especially obviously having Bob on there and his clients and their safety needs. Thank you so much for sharing with us and for taking the time with us to talk about this tragedy, but also hopefully in ways that we can prevent it in the future. It's been real honor to have you guys with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll make sure to also send more information to your videos and your movie, as well as links that you guys have provided to the attendees. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
These links on the screen right now are the best ones to view
Great.
stuff. So
Great.